Hello. So you speak English, right? And you want to learn French. And you like reading. And you would like to learn French by reading. Well, that's perfect. Bless you. You can learn French by reading. You already know like a lot of French words just from English because there's a lot of French words in English. So how do you use that? Well, what you do is you need a simple book to start out with. Like for example, Assimil. But since you only want to read and you don't want to write, you don't do the exercises, but you focus just on the sentences in the exercises and understanding them. And you can use Google, of course, to understand the texts, to understand some words if you don't understand it. You don't have to use Google. You can also learn a lot just from context, looking at the pictures and all that. And what you do is you put this book on your nightstand where you have your normal books that you are going to read anyway. Now, instead of just reading your normal books and then going to bed, if you read before you go to bed like I do, then make sure now you're going to read a little bit in this book and then you read your normal books anyway. So basically make sure that this book becomes part of your normal reading routine. You just read throughout the book and make sure you understand something like 80% of all the text that you are reading. If a book like this one only goes to A1, make sure you do the same with another book that goes to more or less A2. Don't do the exercises, don't listen to the audio. We're learning French by reading here. Then it's time to move on to the next part. You need another book that also uses a very easy language, but now you don't need any grammar anymore. So by the way, you want to read the grammar explanations in this book as well, and just try to understand what they are talking about. Then you can use a book like this. And now, instead of intensive reading, so trying to understand short texts and understand them for like 70-80%, now you want to do extensive reading. Olly has in this book used the most frequently used vocabulary. So when you read the stories, you automatically come across the most used words, right? And those words are used in such a way that you see them over and over again, so you learn them in context. At the end of every chapter, there's a short summary. Now, if you understand the story enough to keep reading, then keep reading. If you feel like you need to understand more to be able to enjoy to keep reading, then read the previous chapter again. Now, that's going to take a while, of course, okay? This is a very simple way to learn French, but that doesn't mean it's going to be easy. So you read throughout the book, and then you will have something like an A2 plus or a B1, and then you can go to the stories in intermediate French. Around that time, you can also start reading another book, which is of course an absolute must for everyone that learns French, which is Le Petit Prince. So this book here by Saint-Exupéry, great book about a little man, or actually about a pilot that ends up in a desert and meets a little fantasy man that comes from space. And it's beautiful, absolutely beautiful, very poetic. And it will take you a while to, read through that. You can Google the words you don't understand if you feel like it. And after that, you are ready to really go through the intermediate stories in French. And after that, you'll be definitely an intermediate reader. Now, from there on, it's going to be a little bit tricky, because now you're going to be exactly in the gap where the stories that are written, especially for learners, are going to be fairly easy, but reading a book in French is still very, very difficult. So there's two ways to go through that. Many ways, but there's two main ways to go through that. You can read more learning material until you've acquired the vocabulary to read a normal book, or you can just do like what I do, and that is pick up a book that's very difficult and just plow through it, right? And after a couple of chapters, it will be a lot easier, especially if those first 2, 3, 4 chapters of a book you read with the help of a translator. So Google or whatever. And when you've read your first book in French, well, then you've learned French by reading. You can read more and more books, and then of course you still need to speak. So what you do is you go back to the previous stories that were very easy for you, and now you listen to the audio file. Like that, you will be able to connect the language that you know so well by now and its spoken form. So when you have enough listening input, you already have a basic idea about the grammar because you've read about it. You know many words because you've read them, and then when you listen to the words, you'll know how they sound, and then you're ready to start reproducing those sounds in conversation. Now, your first conversations, of course, maybe with the tutor on italki, maybe with a friend, are going to be very, very difficult. But because you have already such a big vocabulary, you'll be quickly able to understand podcasts, listen to the news, and then you've learned French in only 6 minutes. Thank you for listening, and I will see you when my French also get as good as I want your French to be.